And how many of y'all needed your atmosphere to shift this morning when you came in? See, that's what worship is about. That's good. Because I think so many of us came in this morning, and what is today? It's Mother's Day, right? And so our thoughts, I have pastor friends that have built whole sermons on mothers today. So sorry, ladies, I did not build the sermon on mothers today. I know, but here's the thing, though. It's like, I'm like, man, there may be some moms get mad at me for not building a mom sermon today. Like, it's a challenge. And I'm like, okay, because it's an exciting day. There's fun things. But for some of you, it's a challenging day, and it's a hard day. I have a friend who actually lost his mother this past year, and I was reading a story this morning, and I'm just like, dude, like, this is a hard day for you. And the gospel is what speaks into our world. Like, the gospel is what heals the sickness in your heart when things hurt. And all of us, when we walk in these doors, need the atmosphere of our heart to change. Because you came in with everything you were carrying this week. You came in with your job, you came in with your family stuff, you came in with your life stuff, you came in with all of this stuff. And God goes, it's time to make a shift in your soul. And it's good. But that takes time. It takes a moment for us to come in and go, okay, I got to hear the worship for a minute. This is why the fellowship of the believers was almost daily in the New Testament. Because on your own, do you typically do this? Some of us do. Some of us have built in segments into our world where it's like, in the morning I'm getting up, I'm cutting the worship on, and before I see anybody, like, I'm going to have some praise time. But a lot of us just kind of go, yeah, I don't understand why my week gets dry. I don't understand why my world stays tough. I don't understand why things are always I'm always battling. But then I go into church, and it feels like something changes from that side of the door to this side of the door. And it's nothing special that I do or that JP does. What happens is God goes, there's going to be an atmospheric shift in your heart. And I think what you may need to pray for this week, as you leave this place, is God, sustain the atmospheric shift in my heart. Because I have a lot of friends that worship is great on Sunday. Life is horrible on Monday. And I think when the church begins to arise, they'll see God is great on Sunday, and also God is great on Monday. And their friends are going to go, why is God great in the midst of your suffering? Why is God great in the midst of your hurt? Why is God great in the midst of your trials? And you're going to go, He's with me always. Like, in this moment, that's what you feel. In this moment, whenever you have sickness in your life and in your world right now, Jesus goes, I'm here to receive that. But He was here with you yesterday too. He's going to be here with you tomorrow too. You see, the Simple Gospel, which is our series that we're currently in, we're in Mark 2. And in this series, we're driving through what is the gospel. And we're looking at the book of Mark going, okay, where's the gospel here? What's happening here? And last week, we talked about how Jesus went home, like, because he'd been going out doing everything, goes home, and what do the people do? They find him at home. Like, they go to his house, and so they all go there, and then he's in his house, and he's teaching in his house, and the room fills up to the point to where somebody on the outside is like, I want to go see Jesus. They take the roof off of his house, lower it out of the roof. And we look at church and we look at the gospel many times and go, okay, it's going to fit in this box for me. But what we're finding in Mark, and if you have your Bibles, we should open up to Mark chapter 2. Because what we're finding in Mark is this continuation of something happening in the life of someone who follows after Jesus. The gospel begins to do something in your world. that others begin to pay attention to. So check this out. In Mark chapter 2, verse 13, we begin to see this. And it says that Jesus went out again beside the sea. So everybody's been in his house. I mean, it's been a nonstop conversation. The roof's been going off. And so at this point, Jesus is just like, I think I'm going to go for a walk. You ever say, I need to go for a walk? Come on now, you can put some hands up on that one. Has anyone ever needed to go for a walk in their life? Yes, all right. Because this is part of the human condition that we have, all right? So we get in this spot that we go, I just got to go for a walk. So here's what happens. He went out again beside the sea, and all the crowd was what? Here comes the crowd to him again. So he's like, I got to go for a walk. I'm going to go to my quiet space, all right? So I'm going to go, like some of us like the ocean, some of us like the mountains. Jesus is like, I'm going to go walk by the sea. And so he's out there walking, and it's just like, here they all are. He's like, guys, like you've been at my house. We've been on the road together. Like we've been doing all of this stuff together. And this is one of the things that when everyone's following you, when everyone is with you, when conversation's going on 24/7, when all of this stuff is happening, I mean, Jesus is doing miracles. He's healing people. He's engaging conversation. He's doing all these amazing things. And for us, for me, I won't say for you, for me, I can sometimes get in the spot where it's like, okay, God's using me. The gospel's being spilled out. God's using me. The gospel's being spilled out. And I get to this point in my environment where I go, God, you're going to use me again, and the gospel's going to get poured out. Like, does it ever just rest? And I can see Jesus as he's walking, everyone's coming to him. Because what we find about the gospel is this, that with the gospel, it challenges the culture and the religious thoughts that we exist with. The gospel challenges the cultural and religious thoughts that you hold. And so when the gospel begins to engage your life, one of the things you begin to do is go, hold on, wait, tell me more. Some of us are in a space in our spiritual lives right now where the gospel isn't influencing us yet because honestly, we're bored. Like the gospel is not attacking this spot way down deep inside. I've heard it before. I've seen it before. I've read it before. I've been down this road before. I've gone through this before. And we get all in this. And what we find is when the gospel really begins to engage your heart and my heart, we begin to follow after Jesus. Oftentimes is the crowd going, hey, wait. You said this. You did this. I want to hear more. I want to know more. What's going on? So he gets into this conversation, and here's what we find. He went out again beside the sea. All the crowd was coming to him. And what was he doing? This is important for us as disciples. So if you're in this room and you're a Christian, this is critical information. Because a lot of times when people come into our world, when they come into our environment and they go, man, what's going on? We have a tendency to go, I'm tired. Can we talk tomorrow? Like, I've got stuff happening. Like, I'm at dinner with my family. Can we have this conversation later? Like, there's stuff in my world right now. And here's what we find Jesus modeling for us in the idea of the gospel is this, that when the crowd follows, when people are paying attention to you, that gives me an opportunity to what? Teach. You see, this is something that each one of us has the ability that follows Christ to do. We have the ability to go teach others about Jesus. And I think a lot of times the church nowadays is coming in going, all right, I need the atmosphere to shift in my heart. Check. I need God to heal and sustain my soul. Check. I'm going to church. Check. But now what? Wait, you want me to go teach? How many of you, if I were to say, hey, I want you to come up here and teach next Sunday, would absolutely panic? Yeah, because not everyone likes to get up here and go, I'm going to teach. And oftentimes, we think teaching is what happens on Sunday morning here in this place only. But you teach all week long. You're having conversations all week long about who God is. What is God to you in your life? What has God done for you? And you have the opportunity to follow after Jesus. Disciple is, I'm going to follow Jesus. I'm going to do as he does. I'm going to allow him to work in my heart. And one of the things he does is he teaches. And so one of the things that we do as disciples of Jesus is we teach. So what are you teaching? Are you teaching that the gospel changes the cultural and religious norms that most people live with? Like, is that something that you're like, hey, here's what I want you to know, that when Jesus walks, that song, when he walks into the room, everything changes? Are you teaching that? Or are you teaching, hey, when he walks into the room, it's actually just like last Sunday. It's actually just like all that stuff that you've heard all along. It's that same stuff all over again. But what the truth is, the reason the crowds followed him, the reason that people pay attention to Jesus was this. He was teaching in a way where action and activity and speaking went all hand in hand. And there was power in what he taught. And that's what we heard last. We never saw anything like this. Last week's conversation concluded with that statement for the gospel. We never saw anything like this. See, the things of your heart are the things that you speak most about. Like, I have friends who love sports. You know what the conversation is pretty much constantly? Sports. I have other friends who can't stand sports. So they've built a whole world around just not standing sports. Like, I hate sports. How about you? I hate sports too. All right, let's go have coffee together and talk about how much we hate sports. I mean, that's their whole world. It's this whole framework of the things of your heart get spoken about. And so in any conversation you're having with anyone, what is the thing of your heart that you're speaking about? Well, I have my job. I got to talk about my job, right? No. That's a cultural thing. The idea that you think you got to talk about your job all the time. Or a religious thing. Well, I went into church this week, and here's what I learned in church this week. That's a religious thing if you're not careful. The most powerful moment that Jesus wants to engage your world in can be just a religious conversation you have with someone else. Because with words should also come power and authority and your emotion. Like, here's the thing. When he walks into the room of your heart, he doesn't just say, some of the things of your heart are going to change, some of the things of your heart are going to stay the same. I'm going to let you categorize which is which, and you tell me what you want me to change, and you tell me what you want to stay the same. But a lot of Christians go, I'm going to follow Jesus, like I'm going to go to church, I'm going to obey him, I'm going to do what he wants me to do, but hey, Jesus, so here's the things that I want you to walk into the room on, and then here's the things I don't want you to walk into the room on. And Jesus goes, this probably isn't going to work out well for you. Because what Jesus is going to do, the moment you begin to subdivide your heart like that, he's going to go, oh, you don't want me to go over there? Like, my kids are the same way. My kids, if I tell them don't go somewhere, do you know what they just have a natural tendency to want to do? Well, why not? And you have to explain, here's what's going on, here's why, here's what's happening. Jesus, when he engages our world with the gospel, says, I'm going to move into every single aspect of your life. And if you begin to wall things off, I'm going to start chipping at that wall. Some of you are here today with things walled off in your heart, and Jesus is chipping at that wall, and you don't like it. Because he's coming in. He goes, my sheep, they hear my voice, they know my name, I know them, they know me. And when I start knocking on the door, they know I'm coming in. So this morning, as you've walked into this space, just be ready. It's our prayer that we pray all the time. God, let your children have the ears to hear and the eyes to see. And when God comes in, be ready to engage it, because it's going to happen. So as he does this, here's what we find. that not only does the crowd begin to follow them, but he's also teaching them. Check this out, verse 14. And as he passed by, this was a phrase that kind of stuck out to me. The passerbys. These are a lot of people in your world. There are a lot of passerbys in your world. There are a lot of people that drive on the road, honk the horn at you, passerbys. A lot of people, there's just people all in your world. And Jesus is going through his world, and here's the thing. He also has the passerbys. They're also in his world. How does the gospel engage a passerby? What happens when your life gets put in the middle of Concord Mills Mall and you're walking and there's all the passerbys? Do we get to go, okay, the gospel is locked into my heart, locked into my soul. It's here, and I got to keep focused. I got to keep straight. I got to keep moving because I got to mind my own business, do my own thing, pay my own attention to what's going on in my life, and I don't want to interrupt anybody. Here's what Jesus does. And as he passed by, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. So here's what we find about the simple gospel. It pays attention to what's going on around us. The gospel is paying attention to what's going on around you. People who walk life with me know that this is one of the truths of my life. As I'm walking through life, I just begin to have random conversations where people begin to spill things out. Like, how does that happen? I have no idea. Like, I'm sitting at dinner, and the waitress begins to tell me all the stuff in her heart. Well, what's going on with that? I could go, "Ma'am, shh. I have church on Sunday. Go there." Like, does that make sense, though? Do you hear the choices we're making? In your job, someone comes in and goes, "Hey, you know what? I wrecked my car. And my life's really rough right now." You can go, "Dude, stinks for you." Or you can engage with gospel. Somebody comes in and they just tell you something about their life, something about their world. The average individual is going to hear it simply as common conversation. The gospel is going to put that into a whole new gear for us. Jesus is walking on the sea. He's teaching. There's a crowd. I mean, he has plenty to do. Most of you walking in here, if we were to have the conversation, you got stuff going on in your life? Yeah, I got plenty to do. Jesus is teaching you something new. Here's what the gospel begins to engage your world with. That in the midst of everything going on around you, when the Spirit speaks, you respond. That in the midst of the crowd, in the midst of all the teaching, that there's still Levi. Do not forget Levi. Do not forget the person that's just walking by you that you think means nothing. They mean the most important thing in your world when God says, "I want you to speak to them." What we find about this that is amazing as we continue to move through this is that not only does Jesus stop and talk to him and say, "Come follow me," but Jesus knows his name. Like there's this, he knows my name. That in the midst of the crowd, in the midst of all the confusion, in the midst of all this stuff, he looks at it and he goes, "There's Levi. Levi, come here." This morning you might have walked in as a stranger. This morning you might have walked in no one knowing your name. But here's the thing. When Jesus calls your name, you're going to know it. That even though no one may know who you are, when he just simply goes, "Michael," I hear it. This morning you may be here and God's calling your name. God's knocking on the door of your heart. God's trying to speak to you. And there's this still small voice inside. And you're going, what's happening? What is that? And Jesus says, "Come follow me." Here's what's cool about Levi. When Jesus says, "Come follow me," Levi doesn't go, "Hey, where to?" So what's the plan for that? Are you paying or am I paying? Like That's not the conversation happening here. When Jesus speaks out, what does Levi do? He obeys. He follows. When Jesus speaks into your heart, when Jesus speaks into your life, here's the thing that's really, really important. When he speaks, we respond. And as we do that, here's what happens. So, 14, he said, follow me. And he rose and he followed him. Verse 15, and as he reclined at the table in his house, many tax collectors and sinners were reclining with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. Now, one of the amazing things that we find about Mark is this idea that he begins to label this out, tax collector and sinner. Now, tax collectors represented the system. Like, they were just what the system was. Nobody liked the tax collectors because they always took everybody else's money. And they did so mischievously. It wasn't they were rightfully taking it, they were wrongfully taking it. And so people despised the tax collectors. The second nature of this was the sinners. Now, at first, whenever you think of a sinner, for me anyways, when I first began to look at it, I was like, okay, a sinner is like you've done some bad stuff. Like, so tax collectors and sinners. Like, you're the ones that either Jesus is hanging out with murdered people, Jesus hanging out with people that have done these horrible things. But here's what Mark is actually referring to. Sinners in Scripture is this: anyone who doesn't follow the covenant of the law. That means he was sitting with people who just decided not to go to church for a while. He was sitting with people who hadn't forgiven somebody else because they were mad at him. He was sitting with people who their religion and their culture wasn't what their life was about. They were just trying to get by and live. And what we find is Jesus reclines and has relationship with everyone. And if you're like one of the tax collectors or sinners, man, you're excited here. You mean Jesus is going to sit down with somebody who didn't go to church every Sunday? And eat with them and hang out and actually be kind to them? You mean Jesus is going to sit down with somebody who didn't forgive somebody else? Because the Pharisees, the religious people, here's what they thought. Jesus was going to come on the scene, and anybody who didn't forgive, anybody who didn't go to church every Sunday, anybody who didn't obey the law, Jesus is going to show up and go, what y'all doing? No. I'm not going to hang out with you. I'm going to judge you. I'm going to condemn you. You're done. Be gone. And so the Pharisees in their religious environment had this whole setup for what they thought Jesus should do. But then when Jesus shows up, instead of condemning them, those who didn't go to church every Sunday, those who didn't forgive everyone, those whose lives they'd made a wreck out of it, those who were living for themselves, those who were trying to figure everything out, even the tax collector at the booth as he's sitting in the chair, Jesus goes, hey, come follow me. He sits down with them and goes, let's talk. I want to hang out with you. When was the last time you hung out with somebody who didn't have the same thoughts that you had on religion, politics, ideas? And you said, hey, you know what? I want to hear from you. See, the Pharisees had this idea of we don't hang out together. You think your way, I think my way, and that's just all it's going to be. Jesus came and here's what he said. I know more than you. And here's what I know. That I came to seek and save the lost. I came to help those who are heartbroken and hurt. That's where he was at. That's why he was sitting at the table with the sinners and the tax collectors. Because here's what he knew about their world. They were in that spot because of hurts, because of brokenness, because of just the things that had happened in their life. And what they needed was somebody to talk to them, not somebody to preach at them. He had a moment for teaching. He had that moment. So I'm not saying those moments aren't important. I'm not saying that the Sunday morning environment isn't very important. But here's what I'm also saying. He didn't make that his only moment. He also, the moments where he sat down with them at the table, had a meal, had dinner together, and actually said, hey, what's going on? How are you doing in your world? How are you doing in your life? What gospel does is the gospel makes it personal. And as disciples, we have to make it personal, not only for ourselves, but for those that are around us. You have friends in your neighborhood. You have coworkers. You have people who need to hear about Jesus. But here's what the culture and status of the state of religion is going to tell you. They don't think like me. They don't do as I do. They don't say as I say. So they can have their kitchen table and I can have my kitchen table. Here's what Jesus says. Invite them for a meal. Sit down with them. Hang out with them. Let them see your life. Let them see who Jesus is to you. But do you know why that can scare the Pharisees and religious people? Because then they may be exposed in their heart. You see, if it's really in your heart, when he walks into the room, what changes? The atmosphere. Everything changes. When he walked into the heart of your life, it wasn't just so that he could go, okay, I've saved your soul, now you can go to heaven when you die. But here's what happens with this conversation. Verse 16, the scribes, the Pharisees, when they saw that he was eating with the sinners and tax collectors, said to his disciples, why does he eat with the tax collectors and sinners? When Jesus heard it, he said to them, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. One of the conversations that we often have is this. We're a room full of broken people. The day that this becomes a room full of the righteous is a day we've lost the message of the gospel. Jesus looks in on our hearts, and here's what he says. I came to provide healing and to provide forgiveness. And the people that sit in that conversation are the tax collectors and the sinners. You and I sat at that table, and here's what we needed to hear out of Jesus. I love you. I give you grace. I forgive you. Will you still use me? Can you imagine Levi? Jesus, I've robbed people. Jesus, I've cheated people. Jesus, I have made a mess of my life. And Jesus goes, I know. Why would you ever invite me to sit at this table? Because I love you. Levi says, but you don't understand. I've robbed people. I've hurt people. My name is mud in this community. If you make me one of your followers, what are they going to say about you? Jesus goes, I got this. I forgive you. I give you grace. I give you mercy. You see, what we find over and over again in the gospel is this. Jesus takes the broken and he takes the sick. And he goes, come unto me and I'm going to give you healing. It's not just about Sunday morning church. It's not just about showing up so that everything can look right in the exterior of your life. It's about going, I'm broken and I need Jesus. It's about going, I'm sick and I need Jesus. I need the physician. I need the healer. I need the Savior. I need the atmosphere in my heart to change. I need the atmosphere in the room to change. But I need the atmosphere in my world to change. And I can't do that on my own. The only thing I can do is remember my hurt. The only thing I can do is remember how I'm broken. The only thing I can do is remember my sickness. And Jesus goes, I know. You came in here today with your sin. You came in here today with your struggles. You came in here today with your issues. And Jesus goes, I know. And then here's what he says. In the midst of all of your sin, in the midst of all of your struggles, in the midst of all of your failures where you don't think you measure up, the statement is simply this: will you follow me? And your heart has to decide, am I going to get up and follow? Or am I going to remain in my sickness and my sin and in my brokenness? Levi got up from the table and followed Jesus. He didn't know what it would mean for his career. He didn't know what it would mean for his job. He didn't know what it would mean for his bills. He didn't know what it would mean for any of the things of life that many people oftentimes focus on as the primary thing of their world. Here's what Levi knew. The creator of the universe, who at word speaks and things are created, called his name. If he calls your name, get up from the table of your life and respond. And don't be surprised when he heals you. Don't be surprised, because he is the physician. He's not just the one that goes, well, I'll get you through this life. Don't you worry about it. He's the one that goes, you want to be healed? Come to me. And you're in church today, you've came to him. So don't be surprised when he heals you this morning. Don't be surprised when the word that your heart hears is, you going to follow me? And your mind begins to go, but I got this, and I got that, and I got this, I got that. Jesus just says, are you going to follow me? Because I'm going to sit with those that hurt. I'm going to put you in places to sit with those that hurt. You will be the servants of this earth. You will be the ones that will go places no one else will go, and you will give water where no one else would give water. They will look at it and go, no thank you. He didn't call you to sit in a chair. I'm going to tweet that later. Sorry, I like that one. That was a good download. He didn't call you to sit in a chair. He called you to go out and provide healing through his name, to provide life in his name. He called you to come into this space this morning so that you could hear your name. And whenever you hear your name, realize it is him calling your name. And when he calls your name, that means that he's saying, I want you to follow me. Your life's going to be different. Your heart's going to be different. Your desires are going to be different. The things that you value are going to change. What you do with your life will never be the same. You will never be alone again, because as long as you speak of truth, as long as you speak of life, as long as you give when no one else will give, they will come to your door. They will come to your house. You will go on vacation and they will find you on vacation. You will go to a restaurant and it will be at a restaurant. You will be out in the middle of the ocean and a pirate's going to show up and go, hey, what is different about you? And you're going to go, how did you find me? And he's going to go, the wind blew. And you're going to go, okay, let me tell you about Jesus sitting on my boat. That's who we are. That's what we do. That is our life, because we have been healed by the physician, and we have that story to go tell. We have that sermon to go teach. We have that lesson to go preach. You've got something to go tell others about. Be excited to go tell them about it, because not everyone knows it. We're in a world that needs Jesus. And whenever you say it's all about Jesus, people get confused. They don't even know what you mean anymore. It's all about Jesus. You mean it's all about your vision for who you think Jesus is? No, it's all about Jesus. Well, it's all about Jesus. Does that mean that your church kind of does things centered around? No, it's all about Jesus. Well, so in your life, it's all about Jesus. Like, does that mean that God does everything for you? No, it's all about Jesus. It means if I'm suffering, I'm doing it for Jesus. It means if I'm happy, I'm doing it for Jesus. That means if I'm crying, I'm doing it for Jesus. And I'm okay with it. That's what it's all about. Jesus means. So whatever your life has going on, that needs to be coming out of your mouth, because I can't preach it for you. I have my song. I've been rescued. I've been redeemed. I've seen the world around me, and I don't want the world has to offer. I want what Jesus has to offer. And if you want the same, then we're going to be a group of men and women that follow after him with all that we are. And Jesus goes, you're going to be a peculiar people. It even says it in Scripture. Like, it'd be one thing if our English language said, okay, y'all going to be a bunch of weird people. And we'd go, some pastor a long time ago coined that. No, Scripture says this. You are a peculiar people, that you should go forth and show the excellencies of him who has called you out. We walk along this earth as his children. We know what that means. We walk among people all day long, the passerbys. We see the Levites. We see the paralytics. We see the blind. And some of that is physical, but some of that is spiritual. And here's what he says to you as his disciple. Go make more disciples. The story of the simple gospel is this. The gospel changes your heart. It changes the way that you see time. It changes the way that you view holidays. Because here's what I know about Mother's Day. There's a lot of broken hearts. And in broken hearts, the gospel says Mother's Day is okay. Because God goes, I came for the brokenhearted. If your heart's broken today, Jesus says, I'll give you a hug. If your heart's got something going on inside right now, and you've walked into this space and you don't know how to deal with it, you don't know how to take it, you just know that because of the stuff in your heart, you don't think you could ever have the atmosphere of your heart change. Jesus says this, bring it to me and be amazed. Let's close our eyes and let's pray.